Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. Happy Tuesday to everybody, and hello to the Pewter people that are joining the chat as we speak. Got a great episode on deck for everybody as we are talking about the Bucs' most stacked positions, starting with the offense. We'll do the defense later on this week. But it's always fun talking about scoring points, putting up big numbers with this offensive side of the football. We'll talk about some announcements that have been made that came from the Bucs and also something that impacts the Bucs as well during this season that is coming up. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow colleague from PewterReport.com. He's our BA. He's the baddest of bunnies. Bailey Adams joins the show. What's going on, Bailey?
Hey, how you doing, Matt?
I am doing very well. Thank you very much. I always try to throw some type of Bad Bunny reference in there, as we are both pretty big fans. But yeah, glad to have you on the show. Thank you very much for joining. I do have to say, I'm a big fan of your background as well, particularly the number 12 with the dog on it. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be Tom Brady putting that dog in him or having that dog in him, but yeah.
Yeah, that's actually my family's dog, and someone gave it to me as a gift for Christmas. Actually, a couple friends pulled together and gave it to me as a gift for Christmas a few years ago. And yeah, I guess the 12 is probably in reference to Tom Brady.
Cool. Well, anyway, big fan of it. Just want to let you know. And I know the Pewter people and Bucs fans, they are big fans about schedule releases and big time dates and when the Bucs are going to be participating. So some of the news that came out earlier today came out for all the teams, but we're just focused on the Buccaneers. The dates for when the Bucs are going to be reporting for training camp. They have about 6 weeks off, with late July slated to be the day that they get going. Rookies will report on Monday, July 22nd, with the veterans reporting one day later on July 23rd. In comparison to the rest of the NFC South, it's quite interesting. The Atlanta Falcons, who we'll get to momentarily with some announcements that they made, everyone's going on the same day. They're all reporting on a day after the Bucs report on Wednesday, July 24th. The Panthers and the Saints are going a little bit of a different route. The Panthers have their veterans. Rookies always report first. The veterans are also reporting on the same day that the Bucs veterans are, on July 23rd. However, their rookies are reporting on July 19th. And the Saints are taking it even further. First of all, they're practicing in Irvine, California, so not really next to Louisiana. And they have the rookies reporting almost a week earlier on Sunday, July 16th, and then the veterans on July 23rd. I don't know, Bailey, how do you feel about the rookies going so early compared to the Bucs just doing it a day before? Do you think there's any kind of benefit to it, or isn't that where, Bucs rookie minicamp is supposed to be a thing?
Yeah, I do wonder about that. I wonder what the kind of the reasoning is behind that. I think it might be one of those things where it's like you get the guys in the building, you get them going, kind of how things are going to play out during training camp, and then and then the guys, the veterans, come in a few days later. So I think maybe there's a little bit of an advantage to that, but I don't think it's a super sizable thing. I think it's just kind of one of those extra things for the rookies.
Yeah, just something to make notice of. And you can mark it in your calendars, Bucs fans. That's when the Bucs will be reporting, and training camp happens not long after it. I wrote in the article on PewterReport.com that it's going to be a busy summer for the Buccaneers. Not just because they have new players on offense and they have a new offensive system to learn with Liam Cohen, and there's been adjustments made on the defensive side of the football. Those certainly are very, very important, but we're also going to see a lot of competition for the Bucs this season because they have a number of joint training camp games that they are going to be joint training camp practices, I should say, that they will be participating in. The first one, and they're both in the state of Florida. The first one is going to Jacksonville, where they will have a game against the Jaguars on August 17th, and they will have a joint training camp practice with the Jaguars, probably 2 practices the days leading up to the game. So they're on the road for that one. And then literally the week after, the Bucs will be the host as the Miami Dolphins come into town, and they'll have some joint training camp practices, and then their game is on August 23rd, which I believe is a Friday. So we've seen the Bucs do this in the past. Last year, they headed to New York / New Jersey for a joint training camp practice with the Jets, and then had a preseason game with the Jets. In the past, the Titans have come to town. The Bucs have also gone to Tennessee. So that is fairly regular for them. The Dolphins came a couple of years ago as well, when Ryan Fitzpatrick first joined the Miami Dolphins. They came, I want to say in 2021 or 2022. No, it had to be 2021, because I remember infamously from those practices, and we lost Bailey Adams real quick, so I'm just going to keep talking about these joint training camp practices until Bailey is able to sign back on. But I remember from that Miami Dolphins joint training camp practice with the Buccaneers, Antonio Brown ended up getting into a fight or something like that. And Bruce Arians was defending him after, said, yeah, he was just swatting at a fly or something like that. So I remember that was a a big thing that Bruce Arians said when, defending Antonio Brown. We all know how that season went. And then, of course, also, it was very fun because it was like Tyreek Hill just joining the Dolphins. So we got to see Carlton Davis go up against Tyreek and Jamel Dean go up against Tyreek. And they didn't play the Dolphins during the season that year, I don't believe. So it was fun to kind of see some matchups a little more up close and personal than up in the press box or on your TV for something that's not necessarily going to happen in the regular season, at least for that year. And we've seen matchups between the Bucs and Tyreek Hill that have been a lot of fun. Shout out to all you guys in the comments. You guys are bringing it. Remember, if you want to super chat us, you get to cut the line, and we will make sure we 100% address it. And in the meantime, we'll try to answer some questions as well, starting with Jeff the Champ. As Jeff says, do we know when fans can attend training camp? We don't know all the set dates just yet when training camp is starting. Obviously, we have the dates where they're reporting, and they'll start like right after. But there are a couple of off days in there. Some days are specific to season ticket pass members and other clients of the Buccaneers, and there are some that are open to the fans as well. As soon as we know that information, we will have that info up on pewterreport.com. We'll have an article about it. And so once we know, you guys will know when it's open to the public. Bailey, I was just talking back. Welcome back to the show. I was just talking about the Bucs have in recent years been really busy with these joint training camp practices. I mean, went to Tennessee. They've hosted Tennessee. They've hosted Miami before. They'll host Miami again this year. They went and played the Jets last year. So they, I think, are one of the teams that are at the forefront of, we want to hit someone else besides our own team. So why not just schedule as many joint training camp practices as possible? And I thought one of the funnest ones was a couple of years ago when the Dolphins came to Tampa. Antonio Brown got in a fight. Bruce Arians famously said he was just swatting at a bee. And then also it was when the Dolphins just got Tyreek Hill. So obviously not on the same magnitude of playing in the Super Bowl, but it was Tyreek Hill against the Bucs defense once again. So those moments were fun.
Yeah, I want to say they hosted the Dolphins again the next year in 2022, right? Because I think that was when Tom Brady ended up taking his like leave of absence from training camp. I believe it was around the Dolphins joint training camp practice, actually. So I want to say
that might have been 2022 then.
Yeah, 2022 would have been then. So,
no, 2021, because if Antonio Brown was there, he wasn't. Yeah, maybe they did it 2 years in a row.
I think they did. Anyway. So they've had a bunch of them with them, and I think it's part of it is they want to hit somebody else. Training camp kind of gets tiring after a while when it's just the same, your same opponents, your teammates that you're going up against, and I think also it helps them kind of just prepare for the season, because as much as the preseason games, will help in some ways, obviously practices are a lot more controlled. The coaching staffs can get together and say, here's what we want to accomplish. Like, here's what we're working on, and kind of give their guys a chance to, do a little bit more in a controlled setting where you can see in some cases they learn more from those joint practices than they do from the preseason games. You'll get them in that setting, in that competitive setting for 2 days during the week. And then by the time the game comes around, it's just like a lot of the starters can sit out because they did so much during the week.
Exactly. The starters don't play. And you got some really cool moments too. Like infamously last year, one of the big stories was Trey Palmer beating Sauce Gardner deep on a play for a deep ball and a touchdown. And I will never forget, outside of me trying to nudge my way into in front of a camera so I can get on Hard Knocks because they were playing the Jets at the time. There were so many fights that time against the Jets. But the thing that stood out to me the most is I remember one of them, it was Levante David. And I don't know what was said or what specifically was done, but I had never seen Levante David so enraged before in my life. Like, I could see the whites of his eyes staring daggers because he took his helmet off, staring daggers into whoever he was fighting with at the time. And it's one thing when it's like the special teams guy that's fighting for the last spot on the roster. Mm-hmm. We've both seen Levante David tons of times in training camp, in practice, in games, after games, always chill, calm, cool, collected. I'm not even like calling out Levante. It was just like, it was cool to see because it was so rare and surprising. Like, no one got hurt. It wasn't a big deal at the end of the day. But I always do wonder what was the case for why Levante David like flipped out so much. And as the season goes along, like, week 2, you're not like, hey, so remember training camp a month ago? Like, what happened there? But yeah, so joint training camp practice, that'll be fun. Jaguars, Dolphins, all come in late July. Those joint training camp practices will obviously come in August when they play each other in the preseason. Now, fast forward to the regular season, some news that kind of impacts the Bucs a little bit, but not really. If you see on the schedule here, when the Bucs have their first highly touted, highly coveted matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, which is on Thursday Night Football, they will be retiring the number of quarterback Matt Ryan, who played there for a very long time, won an MVP, won an NFC championship, won the NFC South a fair amount of times as well. We all know 28-3, but Bailey, it'd be a real shame if the Bucs kind of, ruined that party for the Falcons by decimating Atlanta in the first matchup of the year.
Yeah, it'd be a real shame. A lot of Bucs fans will be, I think, very proud to kind of tout that fact if that ends up coming to fruition. I didn't have time to look this up, since that news dropped, but I think over the years, Matt Ryan obviously played against the Bucs several times, obviously twice a year for however many years he was in Atlanta. And I think there were some, they kind of got each other, both ways. I think the Ryan got the Bucs a couple times. I think the Bucs got him back, especially later in his career. I remember the Bucs kind of turned the tide a little bit. So yeah, that'll be kind of just an interesting added wrinkle to that Thursday Night Football game.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So his last season with Atlanta had to be 2019.
I think so.
Yeah, because I don't think he was there in 2020. I'll look it up real quick. I'll use the old.
But he was 16-12 in his career against the Bucs. So
all right. It wasn't like he dominated the Bucs.
No, yeah. It wasn't like a Drew Brees scenario where Brees and the Saints got the better of the Bucs quite a bit. But yeah, no, that'll be interesting to see that happen, I guess, Thursday night in October. So that'll be a cool thing. I know the Bucs obviously with the creamsicle games in the past haven't had the best record. I think the Bucs record in Ring of Honor games isn't the best either.
No.
So we'll see if they get something kind of on the flip side of it's the other team's Ring of Honor game. Maybe they'll flip things in their direction.
Right. Yeah. It has to change in a different way. I'm just looking up Matt Ryan's. So he last played for Atlanta in 2021. Okay. He lost to the Bucs in week 2. The Bucs won 48-25. That was obviously Tom Brady's second year with the Bucs, where they had the greatest regular season in the history of the franchise. And Tom Brady had a single season record of passing yards and touchdowns. And then
I think Mike Edwards picked him off twice in that game. If I'm not mistaken.
You know what? And the other one was Bucs Bucs beat this one was in Atlanta. The Bucs beat them 30-17. I want to check out that 48-25 game though. Let's see. It's good to go down memory lane.
Yeah.
Tom Brady was
those couple years.
24 of 30. He was 24 of 36 for 276 yards and threw for 5 touchdowns. 5 touchdowns.
Yep.
The receivers of those touchdowns, 2 went to Mike Evans, 1 went to Chris Godwin, and 2 went to Rob Gronkowski. So that was a star-studded event for the Bucs in that one. Rushing. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, with that 30-17 one, or maybe I'm thinking of the 2020 season where the Bucs went behind in Atlanta. They went behind at halftime and Brady led them back. I think that might have been 2020.
Yeah, that might have been. I'll check that one next.
Yeah.
Leonard Fournette had 52 rushing yards. Ronald Jones had 27. And Tom Brady also had a rushing attempt for 6 yards, and he also fumbled. I don't know about on that play specifically.
Yeah.
The other scoring plays. Yeah. Mike Edwards had 2.
Might have been a sack.
Pick
I don't
sixes.
remember fumbling on any of those.
That was a crazy moment, though. Yeah, the second one, Ryan, like the ball popped into the air, and Carlton Davis almost intercepted it, but Mike Edwards got it. Yeah, so he had 2 pick sixes in a matter of 3 minutes. That was pretty awesome. It's coming back to me now.
Yeah.
The 30-17 game. Let's see what happened. The Bucs were down after. No.
That might have been 2020 then.
13-7, they were up. 13-10. Nah, I mean, the Falcons made it 20-17 in the third quarter, but in typical Bucs fashion, they pulled away. Leonard Fournette had a touchdown reception. Cam Brate had a touchdown catch. Gronk had a touchdown catch. Brady also threw a pick 6. Gronk had another touchdown.
Matt, the game I'm thinking of was the 2020 game when they were in Atlanta. Atlanta went up 24-7 on the Bucs, and the Bucs ended up winning 31-27. So
gotcha.
They scored 24 straight.
That Tom Brady had 9 touchdown passes against the Falcons that year.
Yeah,
that was wild. But yeah, so it'd be a real shame if the Bucs all of a sudden, really shut down Atlanta in that game when Matt Ryan's in attendance. Maybe Baker Mayfield will throw for 5 and 4 touchdowns against the Falcons this year.
Yeah.
Because, it's been rough with some jersey retirements or Ring of Honor retirements. The Rondé Barber, I think the Rondé Barber one, when they were like beating the Giants, it was Daniel Jones' first start. That was rough. Yeah. Rondé's Hall of Fame thing against the Eagles was this season. Monty Kiffin, I think they might have won.
Yeah.
And
I know they won the Bruce Arians one.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So they won the Bruce Arians one. But, Bailey, we did a recent Pewter Report roundtable topic. Not the one that came out today, but the one that came out last week about who should be the next Bucs player to go into the Hall of Fame. Who was your choice?
I chose Simeon Rice, and I think there's an element of these roundtables to kind of peel behind the curtain or get a look behind the curtain where we don't like to repeat and double up, but there are
Sometimes we do, but
there are a lot of good options for this, and I understand there's a lot of people who will say James Wilder is overdue, and I think that's true. He's overdue. I think Simeon Rice is overdue, and I think Hardy Nickerson's another one that Scott chose, but I went with Simeon Rice, and I think they have so many members of that Super Bowl defense already up in the Ring of Honor. A lot of them are actually in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think Simeon Rice has a case for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and maybe the Ring of Honor thing kind of helps push that, nudge that a little bit. So would like to see Simeon up there. I know I had talked to Scott at practice last week. I think it was just kind of talking during minicamp about next year being the Bucs' 50th anniversary season. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe they double up next year with Ring of Honors and maybe honor one of those, more of a throwback guy like James Wilder or like Hardy Nickerson. So could be interesting. But my pick for this year, if they're going to do one, would be Simeon Rice.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. He's kind of like the man left out. He very much has Hall of Fame numbers. Like if we're just going by numbers, and I know there's a lot more that goes into it than just the numbers, but Simeon Rice has better numbers than DeMarcus Ware, who just went in. But DeMarcus Ware played for the Cowboys, even though in their careers, like the Bucs have had more success than the Cowboys. So it's one of those things. If Simeon Rice played for Dallas, is he in the Hall of Fame? There's an argument to be made for sure. So I think if anything, if Simeon's not going to be in the Hall of Fame, even though he has the credentials to do so, I mean, we had Tony Dungy on the show who said he should be a Hall of Famer. I think you make a great point. It's a good way to kind of put him on everyone's radar once again. Where like almost for Rondé, I think at times Rondé kind of got lost in the weeds just with the all-time greats, and maybe some of it had to do with Rondé retired and the Bucs weren't a good team for a very long time, and it's not fair to Rondé, but when the whole team is not in the spotlight, you're not thinking about their all-time greats. So Simeon Rice makes a ton of sense. Hardy Nickerson makes a ton of sense as well. I like what Josh Capo, who's going to be on the show tomorrow, said. He picked Gene Deckerhoff. I think that's a very interesting one. I think it's a great selection because, I mean, every Bucs fan at one point has gone, fire the cannons, touchdown, Tampa Bay. Like you go on Ronnie and T-Kraz, you've been on that show, or now The Drive with T-Kraz, but like T-Kraz does a great impersonation. It's just a legendary voice for the Buccaneers. So I think Gene Deckerhoff should definitely be there.
He's the voice of my childhood, honestly.
Yeah.
Like that's what it was. I remember listening to games growing up and it being Gene Deckerhoff. And I think something to point out with all of these selections, I think it's a matter of when, not if, for a lot of these guys. Like I think Gene Deckerhoff goes in, I just don't know when. And same thing with Simeon Rice, same thing with Hardy Nickerson. Like it feels like Tom Brady as well. Like there are a lot of these guys who are going to get in. It's just who's next.
Shaggy said if Simeon makes it, that's 5 from 1 defense. Yeah, but the Bucs defense of that first Super Bowl winning team, that's one of the best defenses of all time. Like just off the top of my head, when I think of great defenses, I think the 85 Bears, who don't get talked about enough. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, like that steel curtain back in the day. And then more modern day, I think the Bucs defense, I think the Ravens defense, who won in Tampa, and
the Seahawks, even more modern, I guess.
Yeah, like the Seahawks as well, Legion of Boom. Maybe the Bucs defense just missing a good nickname.
Yeah.
And then Pico. There was one other besides the Ravens. But anyway, I'll think about it later, and I'll bring it up randomly on another show. But I like what Pico, the Style Mutant, said. Mike Evans should not have to wait. Yeah, that should be one of those where, like, as soon as he retires, just throw him in the Hall of Fame.
So make him the first active inductee into the Ring of Honor.
He doesn't hear any of the halftime strategy just because he's
got to give his speech in full uniform.
Right, exactly. Adam Slavon had James Wilder, who his son has been beating the drum for that for a very long time. I think that would be a cool one to do, like when they are wearing the creamsicle jerseys. That would make a ton of sense, and to pay some homage to some other Bucs history that just isn't when they won the Super Bowls, because obviously if you want to have a team that wins all the time, you want to honor those guys, but some players are just victims of their time and didn't play on the best Bucs teams or a team that made it all the way. James Wilder is one of those. Obviously, Leroy Selman, who's infamous in Tampa, maybe didn't win a championship with the Bucs, but it doesn't make him any less important. So I thought those were all good ones for sure. And then I went with TB12, Tom Brady. And I think Brady, and my reason because of it are a couple of reasons, but one of them, he's transcendent of football. Like it's Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Tiger Woods, whatever way you want to rank them. Like those are just gigantic figures where like your grandparents know who those people are. And it's not just that. Like he came to the Bucs, broke franchise records, won a Super Bowl. Like he has the accolades in 3 seasons, and he's the greatest quarterback of all time, one of the most iconic players to ever play the game. And he took the Bucs, who hadn't made the playoffs in over a decade. Like I think there's plenty of reason to put Tom Brady in the Bucs Ring of Honor. I just wonder though, because they just had the roast, and like everyone is kind of back to, hey, the Patriots and Tom Brady, because they had the roast, because they had his jersey retirement and the statue. What if the Bucs like wait 2 years where the ink has dried from everything with Tom Brady and the Patriots, and then it's like, all right, now it's Tom's time for Tampa once again.
Yeah, I like that idea. I mean, I think part of it is like the Patriots had to be the first, like they had to induct him first, I think, like retire his number, do all that because it just made more sense. And it's why I almost wonder if like because I think they had the ceremony the other day, but are they honoring him at a game this year? I feel like they are. I don't really know the whole story there, but I think that's why it almost makes sense to do next year if it's the 50th anniversary season. Maybe do, one from a throwback and a creamsicle game, do James Wilder, and then also double up on Ring of Honor inductees, then do a modern selection like Brady. Like I think that would be a really cool way to celebrate the 50th anniversary because you're kind of looking at, the beginning and the end, or not the end, but the beginning and more current day of the franchise. So a lot of really good options. And then obviously on the team itself, like there are quite a few guys who, when they retire, they're going to be, in that conversation as well. You mentioned Mike Evans, Levante. I think there are certainly some guys that even maybe retired recently or left recently are going to be in the conversation.
Who do you think recently?
I don't know. I said that, and then I'm trying to remember what because I've thought about this. Maybe it's not necessarily recently.
You banging the table for Cam Brate?
He was like the second leading receiver touchdown.
Yeah. Again, he's all very good. He's a guy that should be at Raymond James Stadium, and he should get a standing ovation.
If he had played maybe one more year, I think there would be a case for Gronk. I almost think there would. And I think I might have misspoken as far as guys who retired recently. I think it's more so people in the future, like Tristan Wirfs is on that trajectory.
I agree.
Jr. on that trajectory. That's
totally
more of what I meant. I don't know why I said guys who retired recently. But
Scotty J says Brady 2 years in a Ring of Honor. Come on, man. First of all, it was 3 years. He was the quarterback of the team that won a franchise record 13 regular season wins. So he's the quarterback of that team. He won a Super Bowl in his first year with the team, and he holds franchise records. Like it's not just because
he's top 5 in every category.
It's not just because he's an iconic figure that played in the NFL, and oh, by the way, he went to the Bucs. This isn't like Joe Montana going to the Chiefs, who they were actually like way better than I realized. Like they didn't win a Super Bowl. This isn't like Joe Namath going to the Rams. This isn't like that. Brady came in, smashed individual records, could have won MVP. He could have won MVP. Should have won MVP. Has the most. I don't know if the most, but the most postseason wins in franchise history. Not that it was that difficult to go against, but like he has what he did in Tampa is Ring of Honor worthy, and then you also add in the fanfare of he's an iconic player. So
I think you also have to consider with Tom Brady as far as like you mentioned, the Bucs hadn't been to the playoffs in over a decade. He came in year one, and the culture even to this day. Like you talk to any of the guys who were in that locker room with him, and they still. I think Scott actually wrote about this recently. Like there are guys who still kind of adhere to they learned from him how to take care of their bodies, how to prolong their careers, even the kind of just the winning mentality. It's like the things have carried over from that Tom Brady era. We're only 1 year after it right now, or 2 years now.
Yeah,
but it's one of those things where he had a lasting impact on the franchise itself. Plus, he's the top 3, top 5 in every category for quarterback. He won a Super Bowl, won Super Bowl MVP.
And he brought so much attention, like positive attention to the Bucs where no one was talking about the Bucs. So that's why I disagree with Brent O'Neill saying, sounds like they want Brady in only because of his name. No, he has the production that matches it as well.
It's the best quarterback in franchise history, too. It's a bad history. It's not a good quarterback history, but like it's I don't agree with that. I think it's not just his name. It's the fact that, his short career with the Bucs was, iconic. I mean, it's some of the best memories any Bucs fan's ever going to have was those few years.
And to counteract this point, the Hall of Famers wanted to play with Tom Brady. Like Gronk doesn't go to the Bucs if Tom Brady doesn't play there. And same with Antonio Brown. So Jameis had the record first because Jameis played there first. Then Tom Brady came in and beat it almost immediately. So
that's the thing. So Jameis has a lot of the records for the Bucs. He also played quarterback for the Bucs for 5 years. Brady almost surpassed him, or if Brady had 5 years, he would have smashed those records.
He's franchise, like career records, not single season. Because Brady has the single season.
He's already close to doing so, and he just played for 3 years. And even the third year wasn't the best year.
Right, and they still won the division. Anyway, let's get to Super Chats because Super Chats get to cut the line. So thank you to Meets McGee for this $5 Super Chat who says, Bears defense was only dominant for a short period of time, and James Wilder should be in the Ring of Honor. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what makes a great defense, though. Like, we're still talking about them 4 decades later, or almost 4 decades later. And same with the Bucs defense with Sapp and Simeon Rice and Rondé and everyone that we're talking about. Like, it may have been a short time, but it was a memorable time. At least, we weren't alive in '85, but yeah. But and then to James Wilder, it's very interesting because he's got a lot of numbers. I think he had some records for the Bucs, and yeah, it's tough because it's such a different time, and he wasn't there when the Glazers were in ownership, which I think kind of hurts his cause a little bit. So who knows? There are still a good portion of people that will still wave the banner for James Wilder, and I'm not opposed to putting more players in the Ring of Honor. Like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
So
until very recently, obviously James Wilder, running back, he was the Bucs' all-time leading receptions guy until Mike Evans and Chris Godwin passed him. He's still number 3. Obviously, he had 430 catches in his career. So I mean, yeah, between that and between obviously all he did as a running back, as a rusher, he has the numbers and he has kind of the pedigree to be in the Ring of Honor. So we'll see. It feels like it should be a matter of time, but we'll see how that all plays out.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the current Bucs roster in just a moment, but let's also give a shout out to our friends over at Celsius, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com and the Pewter Report podcast. We always keep the vibes high on this show, a little nostalgia on this show, talking about former Bucs and all-time Bucs and single-season record-holding Buccaneers like Tom Brady. And the vibes are even better when it comes to having a Vibe Celsius energy drink, whether it's the Galaxy, Cosmic, or Astro. Tons of great flavors. Love the Arctic vibe as well. Fantasy and Tropical vibe are fantastic. And also the OGs are great as well. So if you need to find a Celsius energy drink, go to the Celsius store website and punch in your location. It'll tell you the closest location where you can pick one up. Could be a Walmart, 7-Eleven, health and fitness store, or Bailey. It might just be your bodega.
Bodega.
Nice. That was a good take on it. That's
I appreciate it.
Different take than others, but it was good. And once you keep going to your bodega, you love Celsius, which, by the way, no sugar, and it's a great pick-me-up to start the day. You can go to Amazon, click on that subscribe and save, and have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. Could be week, month, quarterly, yearly. You're in charge. You're the captain. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of the Report podcast. I got another super chat to get to, so thanks to Paul Bowen, sticking with our Tom Brady conversation. Thanks for the $1.99 super chat, Paul, who says Brady changed the culture in Tampa. Absolutely. I mean, even just the TB12 method. If everyone thinks it's such like a sham or whatever, why was the head coach was doing it? Bruce Arians was doing it. His wife was doing it. Mike Evans has credited the TB12 method. There are just so many pieces all over the place of Brady helping out this team, both on the field, off the field, and even when he's not even in the league anymore. There are so many different things that we could point to that say Tom Brady made the Bucs better by him being in Tampa. So
absolutely.
All right, Bailey. Let's talk about today's topic, where the Bucs are most stacked. I think there's a couple of ways to go about this on the offensive side of the ball. But if this was a draft and you have the first overall pick, what position group on offense would you say the Bucs are most stacked in depth-wise?
It's an interesting one. I think it's probably the receivers. I think, obviously, when you have the two all-time greats at the position, in your franchise's history, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin at the top, that's always going to help. I think Trey Palmer had his moments last year, and I think he had some ups and downs. I think he's had a really good offseason so far. So he's a guy I think that it's worth being excited about and worth counting on. And then Jalen McMillan, I think, has gotten off to a very, very fast start. Obviously, the Bucs' third-round pick this year. So you're already 4 deep right there. And I think the team and Jason Light, Todd Bowles, even some of the other guys have talked a lot. And we've seen him flash in practice too, as Raheem Jarrett as probably your number 5. So I mean, that's five solid guys. I know those last 3 aren't as proven as maybe you would have found, back in 2020, 2021 with this group. But you're kind of starting to see them build that depth back up there with those 5. Then you've got some other guys vying for that last spot, whether it's, the veteran like Sterling Shepard, who just came in, last week or 2 weeks ago. There's Ryan Miller as an undrafted free agent. He's had a good offseason. Cameron Johnson's an undrafted free agent this year who's looked good so far. So you've got a lot of guys, 3 or 4, maybe even 5, who are looking to get that 6th and 7th spot. So especially when you compare it to the other position groups on this roster, I think especially on the offensive side of the ball, I think you're looking at receiver as the deepest and kind of maybe the most versatile as well.
Yeah, and it's a little apples to oranges, right? Because receiver, you're subbing in several guys. You'll have at least 98% of the time, at least 2 wide receivers on the field. Maybe not 98%, but you get my point. Mm-hmm. You're subbing guys in and out. We're like quarterback. It's literally just Baker unless something has gone terribly wrong. So with all that said, apples and oranges, I think OTAs and specifically minicamp last week, for me, really put it over the top against some of the other positions. Because I have said before, like, Jalen McMillan, I think, has to really prove it before we're just anointing him as, like, wide receiver 3 and watching the skill set. And Trey Palmer, maybe, admittedly, I probably harped a little bit on the negatives more than some of the positives that Trey Palmer's had. And unfortunately, he's been injured and didn't practice at minicamp, but he'll be fine for training camp. Mm-hmm. But then you watch what Jalen McMillan did, and you can't help but get excited and remember that he's a 3rd-round pick and not a late-round pick, so it should transition to the pants a little bit more than some of the other guys. And then, you remember what Palmer did last year, where he has big play capabilities like he did against the Eagles in the playoffs. And then you think, all right, well, now he's got another year under his belt. You have a coordinator that's new to coaching him, but he can obviously take direction and do certain things. And then Rakim Jarrett, I think, in an interesting way, and I don't know if this was by design by the Buccaneers or not, but outside of Baker Mayfield, I think the signing of wide receiver Sterling Shepard kind of benefited Rakim Jarrett in the sense that he's like, oh, my God, I got to get my stuff together because I'm not a lock to make this team. I mean, he never was, being an undrafted free agent, but now there is legit competition and a threat to him making the 53-man roster or being the practice squad guy that gets called up to the active roster on game days. There's a legit threat there now with Sterling Shepard. And I'm not going to put too much stock into what Sterling Shepard has done already because he's been there for 3 days still learning the offense. But Rakim Jarrett balled out the last 2 days of practice. Didn't do too much as a rookie and then obviously went on the IR with that injury. But he's got some athleticism and some big playability that you've seen in the preseason. And you're not going to have too many opportunities with Mike and Chris really carrying the bulk of the production for this team. So if McMillan is to be who we believe he can, and, then you have Trey Palmer as like you said, your 4th or 5th guy. The benefit of Sterling Shepard, in my opinion, and yes, he's a different type of receiver. They have him listed at 5'10", 194. I think if you compared Sterling Shepard to the Russell Gage signing a couple seasons ago, or Brashad Perryman, who was a veteran insurance policy, or even David Moore, the resume, accolades, whatever you want to call it, Sterling Shepard's production in his career in the NFL blows Russell Gage and David Moore and Brashad Perryman out of the water. I mean, it's not even comparable what Sterling Shepard's done in his career versus all of those guys, honestly, combined. And again, Sterling Shepard is not the guy he once was. But if he's going to be your, 6th wide receiver who has a history and a friendship with Baker Mayfield, that's only a benefit. And then Cody Thompson, who you mentioned, could be a key special teams guy, played that role for the Seahawks. I know he's blocked a punt in his career, recovered a fumble last season as well. Ryan Miller made some plays in training camp last year. And then a couple of other guys, Cameron Johnson, rookie wide receiver, undrafted free agent. He's been getting some buzz. Cephas Johnson III as well. Mm-hmm. Bucs signed him last year. The dude is 6'5". Like, he is gargantuan as a wide receiver. Is he going to make the team? Likely not. Could end up being a practice squad guy. But that just seems like a claymation. Like if the Bucs can kind of mold that guy and turn him into
Right.
something, it's going to be Mike and Chris. It's just a matter of who's that production at wide receiver 3 and who's the insurance policy. Well, you have the insurance policy in Sterling Shepard. You have guys that are motivated like Trey Palmer, and McMillan is off to a great start, not just because of production with Baker Mayfield, but he hit it off with Kyle Trask on the 3rd day of practice. He was doing well at rookie minicamp with the rookie quarterbacks. Jalen McMillan quickly is turning into a wide receiver proof. A quarterback proof wide receiver that can work with anybody. You know who else is quarterback proof? Mike Evans. We've seen him get 1,000 yards year after year with quarterback after quarterback. So I think there's a lot to be excited about with this wide receiver group.
Yeah, and I think obviously the big thing with Sterling Shepard is the health and if he can stay healthy. But I think if he stays healthy, the ceiling for him, especially if he's like one of your bottom of the depth chart guys, is a 5 or a 6. Like you're not going to get a lot better than that across the whole league. Assuming he's healthy, obviously I think he'll pick up the offense. I don't think there'll be any problem with that, especially having Baker to lean on to as a friend. So yeah, I mean I think for a couple of years there you saw a lot of guys, whether it was Antonio Brown walking away or it was Scotty Miller or Tyler Johnson, just kind of being phased out. Like you saw the depth at receiver dwindle a little bit. Obviously the Russell Gage signing didn't work out, so that kind of hurt it as well. But I think you're starting to see them build it back up. The one thing they lacked outside of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin was a veteran option. I think Sterling Shepard can be that guy. Maybe Cody Thompson, who's got a little bit of experience as well, can do that. But I think anytime you're leading a position, like you leading the whole group with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans as your 1 and 2, or maybe flip them 1 and 2, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, like you're not going to really beat that position group, the rest of the way.
Yeah, for sure. Now, let me ask you this. With the other position groups, do we want to lump the entire offensive line together or separate tackles and guards? Because I think it's a wildly different ranking if we put them together versus if we separate them.
I was going to say, because if you put them together, I've got them up there pretty high as far as the, how stacked they are across the board. But if we split them up, it is a different conversation. So for the sake of fun, do you want to split them up, I guess?
Yeah, let's split them up because I think offensive tackle is number 2 in the rankings here because Tristan Wirfs, obviously, we want that contract extension to be done as quickly as possible. One of the best offensive tackles in the league. And then Luke Gedeke took such a fantastic step forward last season. I think he's only going to be better. He looks even more confident. He's obviously got a thicker mustache because the Muzzie's in. And, they are destroying the weight room with bench row records. Then you add in, Justin School, who I think at times is going to be that swing tackle, has experience coming in a pinch if it's needed. And Silas Dancy as well, a guy, 6'5", 335. They listed him heavier than Luke Gedeke and Justin School. They have him as the heaviest offensive tackle on the list. Now, how much does that make a difference? It remains to be seen. But I mean, with Tristan and Luke as your top 2 guys, and you feel pretty good about School as your top backup, it's really hard to put them anything lower than 2.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think Brandon Walton can also play right tackle, correct? Am I wrong there? Because he's another guy who we saw a little bit of a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you have, and I don't know if you're going to look at any team across the entire NFL and say like you're going to be in love with their number 3 tackle, whether it's like in the Bucs case, Justin School. But I think for a number 3 tackle, that's a pretty solid option. But like you said, at the top with the left tackle Tristan Wirfs and right tackle Luke Gedeke, it is a group that you have to like, especially if you're the Bucs and kind of building toward the future. You have, want to get that contract done with Tristan Wirfs, and then you got to see, down the road here pretty soon, I guess they'll have to make a decision on Luke Gedeke on the right side. If he keeps improving, he'll be due for a new contract himself in about a year or so.
All right, I took the second one. So who would you take as the 3rd best position on offense for Tampa Bay?
I think I'm going to go with running backs.
Okay.
I think running backs would be, and it's a little difficult. I think I love what Rachaad White did, especially down the stretch last year, and kind of wrote about it as far as in the past, how close he was, over that stretch of time in the end of at the end of the season where he was playing almost Pro Bowl caliber football. Like he
Yeah.
was, I think he had 3 or 4 games in a row where he had over 100 total yards. He can do both. He's a good receiving back, great receiving back. I think you could even say, as far as an all-purpose guy, was a top 5 running back in terms of production. And then you add in a rookie running back like Bucky Irving, who obviously we haven't seen in pads yet. We don't know exactly what he's going to do from the get-go, but I think there's enough there as a 1-2 that's going to be really exciting. And then you have Chase Edmonds, which I think I had said going into the offseason, I would like to see Chase Edmonds back as long as he's more back in that kind of number 3 veteran type role. And that's exactly where he is. I think that's a good spot for him to be in. If he can stay healthy, I think there's a lot of value in what he brings to the room. You saw it when he was healthy last year. So there's those 3 guys, kind of still hoping and waiting for Sean Tucker to kind of build upon the buzz of being that undrafted free agent kind of steal last year because of the heart condition. Didn't really get it done in pass protection. Didn't get to see the field a lot last year, but kind of hope that he's taken that next step forward and can do something even as a number 4 or number 3 running back on some games. So I think there's enough there. And it's weird when you kind of look at this conversation across the board, there aren't a lot of positions on the offense where you can say like that's a super deep group. But I think this is still a solid offense.
Yeah, overall, I think it's solid. I'm very excited about Bucky Irving. He's been getting some hype on NFL.com as well as like a guy to watch out for. So I'm pumped to see him when the pads come on because there's always going to be that, he's kind of small. Like, how will he be with all these giant linemen and defenders around him? But his top ability is bouncing off tackles and staying off of the ground, which, kind of counteracts that. So I do wonder if Rachaad White goes down, is Bucky Irving, and he could prove me wrong, kind of like how Jalen McMillan has. And so this might be a better response for, once we're a couple of weeks in the training camp. But if Rachaad White goes down, is Bucky Irving and Chase Edmonds enough to fill out the room with Sean Tucker and a couple of undrafted running backs that I think have a good shot to make the practice squad? I don't know if I like it just yet, only because Edmonds and his injury history. But with that said, if everyone's healthy, Rachaad White, I just picked in this week's PR roundtable to be the newest Bucs Pro Bowl player in terms of a player that has not made the Pro Bowl before. And I was looking at the Pro Bowl roster, and obviously, like, Christian McCaffrey made it, but was in the Super Bowl, so he didn't play. So, like, they took Jahmyr Gibbs as one of the replacements, and I get it. It's the Lions were a successful team. You can't just go by like the box score. Rachaad White had more rushing yards than Jahmyr Gibbs, even though Rachaad White didn't crack 1,000 yards. Kyren Williams is a guy no one thought was going to make the Pro Bowl that year. He had 1,400 rushing yards, so he totally deserved it. But if Kyren Williams could do it in an offense that the Bucs are now going to be running, if Rachaad White can get over 1,000 yards, maintain a similar offensive production, and let's just say the Bucs win 10 or 11 games versus 9 games, I think Rachaad White can kind of slip in there as a Pro Bowl running back. So I'm very high on Rachaad. I'm very excited about Bucky Irving, and I'm pretty optimistic about some of the rookie undrafted free agents as well. We've talked about them on the show. I don't think they're going to make an impact for the Bucs this season, but keeping them around, they could be like the Marquise Watson, Jose Ramirez on the offensive side of the ball. So I would probably flip-flop running back with the position we're going to talk about next. But
real quick, though, I want to say something real quick because it just actually got my interest. I really like your pick in the roundtable today of Rachaad White because in my mind, I actually was going to say, and then when I started talking a second ago, I wrote about this. I ended up not writing about it because I was going to write in Rachaad White for my roundtable yesterday for today's edition. I ended up going with Jamel Dean. I kind of forgot that I had flipped that in my mind, but I did some of the same research you probably did as far as looking at last year's Pro Bowl running backs. And, if Rachaad White can maintain some of that production, I think if you kind of thread that production and be a little more consistent early in the season and kind of throughout the year, have that type of production, he's going to have better numbers, obviously. And I think there's a chance that he is a Pro Bowl running back. Because I thought he was building enough hype toward the end of last year to where he was almost in that conversation, but But if he would have been a little bit better, weeks 1 through 9 or 10, I think there would have been a shot for him. So if he can do that, I think it's definitely a possibility that he's, in that Pro Bowl conversation. So I liked your pick there.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. The potential is there. Sometimes things just have to fall your way. And
Right.
Kathy Gillespie with the $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Kathy. Says fantasy guys love Rashad. Yeah, because he got a ton of receiving yards last year. But that's kind of the question this season is what will the production be with Bucky Irving also there? Like, is it a 1-2 punch, which Rashad White has talked about, which is totally fine for the Buccaneers. But as far as like Rashad making the Pro Bowl or Rashad or taking Rashad as like an early running back that you want to start on your team, that may have an impact. But as far as just like production of the Bucs being successful, I think that'll be fine.
It's funny you mentioned that and it's funny Kathy mentions that because I've seen in recent days, maybe recent weeks, Bucky Irving's getting some fantasy love as well.
Yes,
like a kind of a fantasy sleeper. You probably maybe aren't gonna take him early, but I'm curious about that. I've seen a lot of people who are kind of more dialed into fantasy than I am. I haven't won a championship in a couple of years.
It's been a while for me.
It's interesting to see kind of him being picked as that guy, as that that potential fantasy pick. So yeah, I mean I like the running back group, but go ahead. You were going to move on to the next position group that I think I'm going to agree with you on kind of how close these two are.
Yeah, I was, but we got a super chat, and of course, if you super chat us, you cut the line. So thank you to McCoy Shedden for this $1.99 super chat, who says, "How's Elijah Klein doing? Chances of him cracking the 53?" So Elijah Klein has been lining up at guard. He was over at right guard, which is where he played at UTEP. But that's interesting because that's Cody Mauch's spot. But I think that was kind of more just early on. Let him be comfortable playing in the NFL. He's taken some reps at left guard too, which obviously if he wants to start, that's going to be an opportunity. The chance of him cracking the 53-man roster, I think there's a very solid opportunity because he's a physical dude. He comes from a college football team that all they did was run the football. The Bucs want to run it. Everyone's been talking about it. The team has been talking about it. So I can't say he's done a ton so far because there's just not physicality going on, and he is a physical mauler type of guy. But I think he's got a pretty good opportunity. If I were to bet on it, I would probably say he's going to make the 53-man roster because of the physicality and this is a guy that you don't want to let slip through the cracks on the practice squad. He ends up signing to another team because Breeson and Sua Opeta are. I kind of get the feeling they're just kind of stopgap guys. Once again, and eventually this could be Elijah Klein's position. Not that the Bucs won't look at offensive line next season as well, but I think he's got a legit shot, Bailey.
Yeah, no, I do too. I think, and it's not necessarily just because he's a draft pick. He's gonna make the roster, but I think there's you want him to make the roster. You want him to do enough to say, all right, like maybe he's not going to start, and I don't think he will, probably at least from the get go. But I think he's going to have a really good chance. They'll give him every opportunity to make that roster out of training camp, and I don't see why he wouldn't. I don't think there's any like superstars, kind of coming up the pipeline as far as guards and backup guards. I think they'll give him a shot to be one of those reserve guards and maybe cross train him at left guard, like you were mentioning, because right now with Cody Mauch at right guard, there's not really a path for him to the field. But if he can play left guard and maybe Bredesen or Opeta aren't going to be cutting it there, maybe you throw him in. And I don't think the Bucs are going to want to be in that spot where they've run through two veteran options at left guard,
right?
And try to flip over to a 6th round pick. But at least you give him the opportunity to play both sides, and then he's at least more valuable to you in the long term as well.
Yeah, and preseason will be huge for him. I'm sure they'll move him around. The Bucs always love to cross train, so. Still a lot more to come from Elijah Klein. All right. The next pick, I will be going with, well, let's just wait a moment after we talk about our friends over at Bay Area Modern Medical. We've had Christopher Lugo on the show before to talk about Bay Area Modern Medical. Are you tired, and the center, of course, are you tired of feeling like just another number in the waiting room? At Bay Area Modern Medical Center in Tampa, we believe you deserve personalized care that puts your health and well-being first. So meet Christopher Lugo. With over 24 years of medical expertise as a primary care provider, he's dedicated to your overall health. But that's not all. Christopher specializes in weight loss, anti-aging, and hormone replacement therapy. That includes testosterone treatments for both men and women. Men, listen up. Testosterone treatments can be affordable. So don't let age slow you down. Reclaim your vitality and get back to feeling great. Turn back the clock with a consultation at Bay Area Modern Medical Center today by visiting BAMMC.com. Here's the difference. Christopher practices concierge medicine. That means no waiting rooms, no rushing through appointments. Imagine it like a doctor who takes the time to go over your extensive lab results, discussing your diet and exercise plan, and provides personalized vitamin and supplement recommendations to optimize your health. They also have same-day appointments that are available for your convenience. Scott Reynolds of PewterReport.com uses it all the time and is very satisfied with the results that he has gotten at Bay Area Modern Medical Center. So, you don't need, if you want to book your appointment and you're in a rush, don't worry. You could do it right now. Book your appointment today at BAMMC.com. Call them at 844-789-2266. That's 844-789-2266. The Bay Area Modern Medical Center, where your health is our priority. All right. Bailey, I'm not sure if you're going to guess this correctly. I think you might. I'm going to go with quarterbacks next.
Okay.
So, obviously, again, this kind of goes back to what we were first saying. It's an apples to oranges thing. Only Baker Mayfield's going to be playing unless something drastic happens. I mean, we saw it last year. He got hurt early in that Indy game, and Kyle Trask ended up coming in. But Kyle Trask is a guy that is going to come in, and I don't think he's going to shake the foundation. I think you can win a game with Kyle Trask. I think he can come in if Baker got hurt, and if the Bucs have a lead, he'll keep that lead. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's a little conservative, doesn't chuck the ball deep a ton, will hit the open guy, for more of a short yardage gain. But I think as far as backups go, he's not the number one backup, but I think he's like a top 15 backup quarterback. Baker Mayfield obviously got the big contract, leader of the team, ingratiated himself. I don't think I really need to say much about Baker. And John Wolford, the guy that probably knows the offense better than any quarterback, on this roster, had his moments in training camp, can sling it deep, maybe the best deep ball out of the quarterbacks. You never want your backup quarterback to play, but I feel good about Baker heading into this year, and if something happens, I feel okay with Kyle Trask and John Wolford.
Yeah, I think especially I would maybe wager, I don't know, can't say I know every one of them in the entire NFL, but I'd say John Wolford is probably a top 5, number 3 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like I think there's, especially when we kind of talk about system fit and experience in the system, the fact that he's even played some, because you have some number 3s throughout the league who I've never seen the field, and he's played meaningful games for the Rams. So I think that group as a whole, like you said, you don't want to see number 2 or number 3 on that depth chart. You want to see Baker play every game, play healthy. But I think it's a solid group for what they have as far as quarterback depth. I think the Bucs are in a good place. I mean, you'd like to have had more experience for Kyle Trask. I think you would like to see know a little bit more about what he can do in a game-to-game basis. But it just that hasn't come up for the Bucs. It hasn't been a situation where they've been able to do that. But as far as the group as a whole, I think you can feel pretty decent about them.
So that leaves us with 2 positions remaining. Tight end, and we'll say interior offensive line. We're not going to break down guard and center separately. We'll keep that together. So, Bailey, the second to last ranking, is it tight end or is it the interior offensive line?
I'd go with the interior offensive line.
Interesting.
I think the fact that I think you have 2 serviceable to very good centers who can play, and maybe even 3. I think Graham Barton, you'd like to see him, as if that's what the Bucs are going to do, they're going to put him in as their starting center as a rookie. I think he's got a Pro Bowl future. I think Scott wrote about him as his pick in the round table, and I said it, shortly after he got drafted. I think he's got Pro Bowl potential. So you have him. You have Robert Hainsey, who isn't the best center the Bucs have ever had, but he's played 2 years. He's been serviceable. I wouldn't say he's been really bad. I think he's been a serviceable kind of a replacement level center, if not even a little better. And then you have Ben Bredeson, who can also play center. He can play guard. Sua Opeta, another veteran who can play guard. You have options there at least. And then I think I'm excited and I'm intrigued by what Cody Mauch's going to do in year 2. I think that there's, maybe he hit a wall a little bit last year as a rookie, but I think, doing some work on his body this offseason, kind of adjusting fully to that transition to the NFL. I think he's in a good spot, and I think he'll be, even improved as in year 2. And I think as far as just maybe not the high level, I don't want to say production, but the high level play maybe isn't the best with this group, or you don't know exactly what you're going to get as far as the highest level. But right. I think the depth of this group is probably a little better than what you have at tight end.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of debate because there's an argument to be made that out of those two positions, the most sure thing is probably Cade Otton at tight end versus like Graham Barton being a rookie and, Cody Mauch, can he take the next step next season? So I think that's a good discussion. I think where it also gets a little blurry is, and you make a good point about Hainsey being like a top backup, but with the Bucs having that weakness of the interior offensive line, and specifically left guard, the Bucs being weaker at interior offensive line hurts the whole team more than the Bucs not having too many options over, at tight end after Cade Otton. So it's an interesting debate because, yeah, I think there are a lot more long-term pieces to like with Mauch and Graham Barton, but in the immediate future, there is a case to be made for tight end. So we'll stick with that because that's the pick you went with, and these are philosophical rankings anyway. But I think it's a good discussion really for what do you value more, like a better player or what helps the system more or future potential. So I think there's like a couple of ways to break it down, which is kind of what makes it fun. As Alien Mastodon says, the tight end should be able to score more touchdowns for the Bucs this year. So that's another thing. I mean, we talked about Cody Mauch taking the next step. Payne Durham's very much in a position to, to take strides and be the tight end too. Obviously, Kokeeft hasn't been playing, and he really wants to move up. And if you want to move up, you can use Eric Gross Group in the official realty group of pewterreport.com. It takes a full team effort to win a football game, and it takes a full team effort to win in real estate. The Eric Gross Group has done hundreds of transactions in this crazy real estate market and has experience in all types of situations. Their clients are not just transactions, they are lifelong friendships. So don't let the stress of buying or selling a home keep you out of the game. Let the Eric Gross Group take the pressure off. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Eric Gross Group. Check out their website, housesinfla.com, or give them a call at 513-907-4271. That's 513-907-4271. No matter where you are on your home ownership journey, you'll feel welcome with the Eric Gross Group, the official realtor of pewterreport.com. All right, it's been a lot of fun today. Thanks again to Bailey for joining the show. Bailey, what's your social media, just so everyone can follow you if they're not already doing so?
Yeah, we're on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days, at Bailey J. Adams 22.
Cool. So make sure you follow Bailey and, of course, follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. And, of course, our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment as well. Let us know your rankings, what you would do for the offensive side of the ball. Tomorrow's show, we're going to take a look back at the offseason moves that the Bucs have made. Josh Capo will be joining me tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we pick back up this discussion talking about where the Bucs are stacked on the defensive side of the football with Adam Slavon joining once again. So got a great couple of shows remaining during the week. Very excited to get to it. So until then, for Bailey Adams, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.